Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we enter into the month of August, I'm reminded of the differences of communities around the world, and even in the states. And this month in the states is National Wellness Month, prioritizing our own self care a lot, managing stress, time management, promoting healthy routines. Um, and sometimes the hardest thing to say as adults is that I need help. So again, I have a new guest. She is coming all the way from Israel. Murielle, welcome so much for joining us and being part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I just want to give a disclaimer for those who are listening, watching, wherever you are in the world. I don't like reinventing the wheel. I work in the mental health field and find what resources work. So in the United States, 9AA is a suicide crisis lifeline. Resources come in all shapes and sizes, whether it's a church community, whether it's whatever it may be, a mosque, whatever it is. Find what help. Find people that you could be around that you could say those three words: "I need help," and effectively. And I just want to. I always kind of say this, Muriel, that people say it better than I do, and they usually do. David Spangler says it this way, just to spark our conversation. It says, "Some people think that they're in the community, but they're only in proximity. True community requires commitment and openness. It is a willingness to extend yourself to encounter and know the other." What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
When I hear that, two things come to mind. First, to remember that we are the same, we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel that maybe sometimes we're alone, but we're all the same. The basic needs of human beings are the same, the six basic needs. And the other thing is be willing to be vulnerable, because when you are vulnerable, first of all you can get supported,
Mm-hmm.
and you give permission to the person in front of you to be vulnerable as well, and that way you can really connect from the heart and form a real community, heart to heart.
Yeah, and I feel some part of that can be helped by noticing your environment. I'm half noticing the people around you. My On my mom's side, I'm South Korean. I'm Puerto Rican South Korean. So there's this word. It's untranslatable. It's nunchi. It actually means the subtle, often unnoticed art of listening, engaging another's mood. Um, I know this at least for my mom, but I would say most sons and daughters would say, my mom knows when I'm doing something wrong or whatever. But for me, I feel there's this intentionality, at least from my experience from my mom's side, to be kind of self-aware of the people around. Like when you step in the room, you kind of have this idea of not just looking what things on the surface, but kind of being aware, this doesn't seem right. My mom used to say, because she moved to the States in the late '70s, like the person has sense, like it's not common sense, but like have the ability to understand the people around you, not just kind of using a blunt way of kind of communicating or kind of connecting. So I just want to share this word. My wife has this untranslatable word book, and this is one of them. So I wanted to share that. I just want to ask you. There's another thought, especially now that we live after COVID, after especially social media keeps ramping up, and I was kind of at the generation who didn't have computers, and then we had computers, so I'm kind of in that mixed area. So like I remember Oregon Trail as as the computer game when I was young. So Kurt Von, I don't know how to say his last name very well, so I apologize. But Kurt says, "What should young people do with their lives today? Many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is to create stable communities in which the terrible disease of loneliness can be cured." Obviously, it's a big, um, I guess, goal. But what do you think of the idea of what he's trying to explain here, or any thoughts you want to add to it?
So for being a parent, and having seen my kids suffer from social media, for
Mm-hmm.
example, is to the importance of for parents to transmit to the kids, to explain to the kids that to not believe everything they see
Mm-hmm.
because it's not real,
Mm-hmm.
and to also try to connect in real life. And because I've seen, even when my son, when we were living in the US, everything was going through their phone. Any kind of gathering, anything was through Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
And when his phone got broken, that was very obvious. He suddenly had no social life.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe to remember that what you see is not real, because they try to compete and to compare themselves, and they end up feeling less than in a lot of times, and to really connect in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it may be difficult for them because they're not used to that. The youth today is really glued to the phone, but to remember that, and also to voice when they don't feel good, say it out loud, because it loses its power when it comes out loud. It losing a little bit of its hold on you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not as strong. You don't feel as alone. So those two pointers, maybe.
Yeah, and I feel, you know, along those same lines, thinking we're talking about community, we're talking about overall, you know, self care, and also just along those lines, I want to ask you, how do you think we may be able to be better in helping those in need in our community? It doesn't have to be, and to piggyback that, what have you seen work in helping community, and what have not? Obviously, each community is different, so
It,
um,
it,
any thoughts?
it depends on which community are you talking about, because we are small communities in big communities. A city can be a community.
I guess you start from the small first, from your
Yeah.
whole like, and then go back, branch out after that. So,
So,
like,
like you mentioned
mm,
earlier, to be aware of your environment, to be aware of the people in your life,
mm,
and even if you don't know what to do, because in my family we went through very difficult stuff, and sometimes you don't know what to do, or when a friend or family member is going through something and you don't know what to do, a hug.
mm,
A hug, if, of course, ask the person first, because in nowadays you cannot touch people without asking.
mm,
A hug, a smile, a
mm,
sentence like, I'm there if you need to,
mm.
because you may not have their solution, but to be supporting the other person by your presence. So that I've always been seen it work. The thing that I came to my mind when you said that is not working is to be, I know we're talking about community, but sometimes you're too defined by your community,
I see.
and you forget to be open to the rest of the world that is not like you or not part of your community.
Mm,
So enjoy your community, but remember that no one holds the full truth. No
mm.
one has the one key to happiness. No one, etc. Be open to others outside of your community.
Yeah, and I like what you said. Like, at least in the field I work with mental health, a lot of the problems are been there for a long time. So to even assume that one conversation or one, even a few, I think what has helped, what I've seen, is just being present, being there
Yeah.
with the person. I'm not going to understand, especially with something very sensitive. I'm not going to understand what you're going through. Most times we don't understand what people are going through, but the fact is they don't want that. They just want you to be there.
Yeah.
I think it gets complicated, in a church setting. Being a leader in a church, I know that someone may have, I guess in the sense they got a good result from their cancer. Like, they have cancer, they have a good result, and then they're like, oh, my mom or my son or whatever has beat cancer, right? While in the same congregation, it was, sometimes you don't communicate that person. They may have just lost someone a week ago, so that gets a little complicated because you're dealing with two different people, and depending on how they communicate, how they ask for help, and I do also like that, when I define communities, I don't always like the idea that they have to think or see or look exactly like you. I think communities should be something that we're daring to kind of go to be around people that don't think like us. Some of the best, because I've been on boards, so I think some of the more comforting boards, even though board meetings are awful, are the ones that everyone don't really agree. If you have the same people all thinking the same thing, there's no diversity. And I feel diversity kind of brings better community and communication.
And there is no space to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's this idea of comfort, or not really comfort, but there's a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of times we define communities as people that who agree with us, who feel like us, who talk like us. But I learned the most from the people who have been, how do you say, the thorn on my side. You know, I guess 2020 hindsight's 2020, but understanding that at least for me, that not everyone's going to agree with you, and that's okay. And doesn't mean that their idea is worse or your idea is better. It just means that you guys are different priorities and different focuses. So I just want to shift gears. I know we've been talking; it's been great. I want to give the listeners and those who are watching a moment to get to know a little bit about you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Your story, what brings you to do what you do, and why do you think community is important? Any of those things. Go ahead.
So my story, I raised three kids as a single mom with basically no support. So I didn't really have a strong community around me because I was in the state where I didn't have any family. And when my kids became teenagers, two of them started to really act out in potential dangerous ways, and it spiraled me into depression because I was living in anxiety 24/7. And until I was able to, first of all, realize that I was depressed because I didn't even see it, and then find a way to ask for help. I asked from the divine, but because I didn't have anyone around me who could help me. And when I realized that, one, I don't control everything and no one, we don't control anyone,
Yeah.
and sometimes not even ourselves. And I didn't have power on a certain portion of my life, which was my kids were too experimental with parties and drugs and stuff. And I was always afraid that I would lose a kid. And until I realized that it was not my job to maintain, like, I couldn't be certain that they would be alive if it was in my destiny to lose a kid. There's nothing I could do that would prevent that. So I relinquished that to God, to the universe, to source, whatever you want to call it. And I said, the same way you protected me, protect them. And I allocated all my energy in my zone of power. This was my zone of powerlessness, which I relinquished to God, surrendering to God. I moved to my zone of power where I had to first find a way to move back up from depression, where I used meditation and emotional freedom techniques and mindfulness. And I used my power to change the way I was seeing things so that I could be neutral enough to use my inner resources, my brain, because when you are on stress, when you are on a fight or flight response from your brain, which what happens when you're afraid, your brain doesn't function normally. You don't have access to your full resources. So I wanted to have access to my inner wisdom, my brain resources, and I wanted to be neutral enough to ask for answers, to ask for the next step, and really being flexible enough to not decide how it should look, but be really open to, when I asked for an answer or guidance, what was coming my way. Sometimes it was a book, sometimes it was a person, sometimes it was something else. And I changed completely the way that I did life. I really included more of the divine into my life as a co-creator of my life. That's why I called my business Co-Parenting with the Universe, because I really wanted to tap into that power. And later on, I had a suicidal attempt with one of my teens, but I was ready. I had the universe helping me. I was able to stay strong and neutral enough because of what I had gone through before to help my kid at the highest of my possibilities and my abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I really, talking about community, I decided that I would do whatever I could so that no mom would struggle alone like I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I would form somehow online or around me a community to remind moms that they were not alone and they could. We have what it takes to go through what happens to us. We just need to remember that. So that's my story.
Yeah, and you mentioned EFT. I myself have done the tapping myself. For those who know me before, obviously, I struggled with mental illness for quite some time, and EFT, mindfulness. I remember just being in therapy, and actually, a lot of times there's interpersonal, and my therapist had me sit in different chairs to talk to myself as the person or the conflict or whatever may be, and it was cathartic. And I do find, especially even today, working in the field, just what's better for you, like whoever it is, is centered to that. And also, um, I find that some of the barriers are what we're talking about: the communication, the inability to feel that they can speak, or and I do appreciate what you're mentioning, because the idea is, a lot of times we try to control what we can't, and we get stuck.
Yeah.
um and it's a horrible feeling when you're I guess when you're stuck in that manner, because you want to do. It's not like you're watching it as a spectator, but it's not that you're not. And those who are listening, I just want to stress this: you're not that you're not caring. You love the individual. It's just that that you can't. At least I know this more now working in the field. I could tell them all the resources. I tell them, oh, this is what you should do, but the choice ultimately is of the individual. And the thing that I feel is, if you're not doing well, Modiel, you're not going to be able to help anyone. So, like, a lot of people sometimes coming into my office or whatever, a lot of times they're saving the world, but not themselves. And I do encourage, especially now that this month being National Wellness Month, but also whatever month it is, to take time to take care of yourself, because you won't be any good to those who you care about if you're not doing that. EFT was very helpful for me. It was surprising. I thought it was weird. I didn't understand it. I felt it was awkward, but there's something about it. Mindfulness, I'm a gamer, so I just think about putting myself as a third person and zooming out of the whole big picture, because it does kind of help give
Oh,
perspective. So I do appreciate that. There's the African proverb, just kind of transition to. I like this African proverb. It says, "If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." I think it really solidifies what community is about. A lot of times when we're stuck, at least what I find in our self care, when is always, there's always someone else, but when is there ever time for the individual itself? And there's always not only someone else, but some arbitrary time. You will get there at your time. Anything you want to add or comment on that?
Um, yes, we're not meant to live alone. We're not meant to struggle alone. We
Mm-hmm.
are we are people who need community.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I notice with myself, even as a business owner, sometimes when I struggle, I have someone looking at me from the outside and telling me, "What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You're not stuck. Look at this and that." And we have blinders.
Yeah.
And that helps so much when you have someone in front of you who can reflect to you where you are in your own way. And you
Mm-hmm.
can do the same for the person. Of course, always respectfully. It's not about throwing stuff that the person didn't ask for, but
Mm-hmm.
we need each other. We need each other.
Yeah. We're not islands, and I think one thing this month is national. There's a lot of remembering, because we're horrible at remembering things, and sometimes I just sometimes we gloss over. We say, "Well, I'm not. Only if I could get this." You're never really satisfied where you're at in any given moment. There's always this concept of enjoying the process, enjoying where you're at right now. The fact of the matter is, we're all gonna kind of be unfinished all our lives. It's kind of weird to think of that way, but it is.
But
But
it's beautiful.
it is beautiful. You know, there's a word again. I'm going to use another word
That's
from
great.
that book.
I'm learning a lot.
Wabi sabi is Japanese, is finding beauty in the imperfections and accepting of the cycle of life and death. I think one thing I noticed, especially working with some hard cases, and is that I find a richness of my connection with them. And I'll say this because it's it's not with all the fluff. A lot of times, sometimes I'm and whether I'm a church leader meeting someone at a very hard crossroads or working in my field and just knowing, a lot of people just focus on, well, the exactness of the rightness of what they say, but there's also a lot of depth, and I feel refreshing of my conversation. It's not to minimize what they're going through, but the honesty is there. The honesty is there in regards to when we are in need, when we're asking for help, when we're saying, I can't do this. This is too much. I need help. And I feel that for me, when you're able to see that and you kind of have that moment, it provides that kind of connection. And like you said, we're not islands and stuff in that regard. So I want to ask you, and you could add, and I apologize, but add anything that I've said or anything you want to continue to share. But why do you think community matters to our overall wellness? It kind of seems redundant, but in your own words, that we haven't captured.
Because when we struggle, we feel that we are alone in
Yeah.
there. We feel that nobody has ever
Mm,
experienced what we are experiencing.
mm,
That I know when I was depressed, I kept saying, I would love to disappear. Just
mm,
take me.
mm,
And if I had someone that I could have talked to,
mm.
and especially someone who went through what I've, or something similar, we all have challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
It would have given me hope that I was not alone. There is a solution,
Mm,
and it's not. There are other people that went through what I'm going through, and witnessing someone's pain.
mm,
I know when I coach people, and even when I talk with people wherever I go, even though you want to get out of the situation, there is a need for witnessing another human being's pain, because
mm,
then you feel validated, and you can trust and open yourself. It doesn't
mm,
mean you need to get buried into the negative or whatever, but witness. Yes, you're suffering. That's true,
mm,
and
mm.
you can you let them access their own wisdom, because it's not about us to tell them what to do. It's them. They know. We have at the answer when we feel safe enough and have a sacred container when you can access it.
Yeah. I remember a couple months ago, I always kind of put a little bit of thought into the each month's theme. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I thought to myself of the theme of being remembering our names. I think names are very fundamentally human, and I feel sometimes through all the fluff, helping someone is work. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Being even the ones we love very close, it is inconvenient at times. It's not that we don't love them, but when we remember the reason why, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when we remember the person themselves. We don't remember all the things that may be barriers, and also understand we're only one person. We're one person, so we need to know how to ask for help. Like there's an old saying that doctors don't make good patients, nurses don't make good patients because they try to doctor themselves. I would suggest, if you're trying to help someone, the fact that you're there, you're talking with them, you're present with them, but you're not know that if it's overwhelming or there's something that you need help in, or you learn to find ways to ask for help, for resources to help your friend, your family member. We're all that's where community gets built, when you're like, okay, I can help this way, I can help this way. but maybe someone else could help that way. And it's maybe, and when I see that, that's when I think the supporting of a community kind of gets visualized. When one person may be good at, I don't know, loves cooking, and the person's stuck at home, she'll bring some food, because no, that when you're feeling that low, you don't want to cook, you don't want to eat. The fact that the person's checking on you, meanwhile, that person's not a nurse, doesn't know what you should be taking, but that person may know someone who has the availability to transport you to the doctor's office that you don't feel like going to, just to check on you. The follow up, I find, is very important. Anything you want to add?
Yes, what I would like to add is asking for help has a very bad rap in our society. It makes
Mm.
us look weak,
Hmm.
and that's not true. Actually, I think it's the opposite.
Hmm.
And like you mentioned, knowing your forte, knowing where you can help and where you're not good at,
Hmm.
is also very important, because it's better to let someone who's better at that do that, and for you
Hmm.
to do what you're good at and where you can help. And so self-awareness, and know how you can, what you can bring to the table also.
Yeah, I think even if you're good at something, several things, if there's someone willing to help, being able to step back. And
Yeah.
funny enough, in the church, I run the sound, and I tell the pastor there, he's a good friend of mine. I tell him, I know I'm doing a good job when it's filled with kids, and there's no room for me to stand there. So for me, that's the idea. It's never really about me. Obviously, I just want to inspire those to do. The idea is never I'm the only one who can do. It's very ineffective if you're the only one. And if you're doing it well, find someone who's maybe passionate in your community, or maybe you're doing something and someone else has some similar experience. Encourage them in the sense that because the fact of the matter, it takes a community in that regards. I want to I want to ask you a follow up question. This month, obviously, you're in Israel, but this month, I think worldwide, in the sense that we all have to kind of be aware of our wellness when they're. So these remembering days just gives us a moment to kind of pause. What would you like people to remember in this month, 2023, in regards to Wellness Month?
It's not selfish to take care of you.
Agreed. Agreed. I think the does just put some dirt on it. It does some. I think it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't make you weaker. I just want to. I was in the military, Air Force. My brother was in the military. I was in combat, but I know people who were. Now a lot of people associate bravery and courage, those people who die, and I salute them, their sacrifice, because they had something to lose. They had family members, they had a lot of people at home waiting for them. So of course, I do not minimize that, those people who have lost loved ones in combat. But I would like to say those who are in civilian world, who are working day to day, who are struggling to find connections, find support. Some of the bravest things you could do is live. To choose to live, choose
Yeah.
to live for today. The fact of the matter is, there's no shortcuts. There's no certainty. It's just figure, figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and at the same time surrounding yourself with people who can help you, and at the same time being open-minded to other ways of thinking and doing things, always diving deeper. I always feel that that's important, self-reflecting. And that's my final thought. I'm throwing that to you. Any final thoughts that you want to share with those listening today?
Uh, what came to mind is love comes in many forms.
Hmm.
It can be a smile, it can be someone helping someone cross the street, it can be anything.
Yeah.
But I know when I go to a store and I smile to a cashier who has a hard day, I know, even I'm not a hero for that, but I know it helps a little bit.
Yeah.
And anything helps. So if you are, because I coach mostly single moms, They don't have a lot of time to help here and there, but you can always smile. You can always, even if it is closing your eyes and sending love,
Mm.
uh, that works.
Yeah, I feel um, just to piggyback your attitude and how you approach and how you respond really impact the people around you more than you think. You don't know
Yeah.
what their day is. You're
True.
waiting in line. Most everyone else will not have patience because if something went wrong with the computer systems that you're trying to check out. At the same time, if you're able to be kind, not be nice. I'll say this in the last kind of
Yeah.
point. Nice, I feel so vague. We kind of say it all the time. Doesn't
Yeah.
really share what it means. Kindness means you don't respect anything back. You're just kind,
Yeah.
because you know that life's difficult. You don't know what they're going through. They messed up your order. Eh, would you want to bark at them? How about if you were that person? You don't know what they're going through. So it's kind of having that idea that when we're thinking about our community, when we're thinking about helping others, if you don't have time, like you're mentioning, Murielle, how you respond to people may be one way you can help.
Uh,
Well, go ahead.
is it a question?
No, it was a rhetorical,
Oh,
I guess.
okay.
But um, any last things you want to share,
I
Murielle?
just wanted to share a game that we used to do with my kids when I was driving and someone was cutting you off. And because I always told my kids, you don't have the whole picture. You see what they just did, but you don't know what they're going through. So we had a game trying to guess what made that person do that. Is his wife is going giving birth? Are they going to be late for an appointment and they're going to be fired if they don't get there on time? Or finding reasons that because nothing is personal, people don't do things to us. They are in their bubble. We are in our bubble,
Yeah.
and finding a way to make it so that you don't feel that it's personal, so you don't react in a nasty way. You try to make it funny, make it a game, and play like that. That just came to my mind when you were talking about responding, and
Mm.
uh, that's what we used to do with my kids when we were driving together.
And you bring up one point I wanted to stress. A lot of people, they're not even knowing aware of what you're going through, so it's never really personal. A lot of times we
Yeah,
do understand if you're stressed out, you had a bad day, you're going to respond if you're not aware of it to someone who has no idea what you're going through, or so just I just encourage those who are listening, when you talk about self-awareness, when you talk about self-care, it's also how we moderate our emotions, but also how we respond to them. Okay. So I want to say thank you. It was wonderful talking to you,
my
Murielle.
pleasure. It was very pleasurable.
And remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministries, various platforms. ReviveMinistryFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote. It's from Coretta Scott King. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members.